Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that usually means Tag Tuesday on BookTube, one of the ritual things that we do here in BookTube that makes the place so much fun. I was not originally going to do a tag today. I already did a weird kind of rambly video about books and Star Trek, and I was going to have to restrict myself to that because I've got a massive, massive work project that is not going anywhere. It's not moving, needs to be done, or 10 different people are going to be let down. And that time's got to come from somewhere. It's already eating into all my other time, except Frida time. It's eating into everything else. So I was just going to do that one video, but then I watched a video by Gina Stanyer where she did a tag for today, and she started that video in a typically wonderful way by talking about all how these communal aspects, these fun team aspects of BookTube make it so enjoyable. I thought, yeah, that's absolutely true. I do agree with that. I don't want to let Tuesday go by without a tag. And in addition to that, I also thought when I was watching the actual tag she was doing, she did the currently reading tag. And I was watching, these are exactly the kinds of questions that I ask people anyway. I'm always interested about them. But then I realized, yes, I have already done this tag, but it was 7 years ago. I did this tag 7 years ago. A lot has changed since then. A lot. Not just in my world, but in my reading world. So that was entirely legitimate, not only to do a tag so that I'm keeping an oar in the water for BookTube, but also to do this tag again, the 2023 version of the currently reading tag. So let's look at the prompts and see not only how things have changed, but what has stayed the same. Prompt number one is, how many books do you read at once? And I don't actually remember what my answer was 7 years ago, but currently, the only thing that would increase that number above one would be locational. Usually, I have a book going in the bathroom. I'm just sitting there in the bathroom, so that I don't need to think about it. I don't need to worry about it at all. And in ye olden days, I would have books on the bedside, on the nightstand. I would have at least one book in my satchel for when I'm out and about, and I would have a book in the bathroom. So that would be 3 different locations, technically 3 books going at the same time. The element that complicates things here is that I'm a very fast reader, and I don't do anything else. I really don't do anything else. I don't have a job I have to report to. I don't have fixed hours. I don't have classes. I don't have loved ones or family obligations or anything like that. I don't have anything like that. My world is entirely books. Which means that the combination of those two things, the speed at which I read and the exclusivity of reading in my life, means usually that I start a book and then finish it. So there's no actual reason for me to have more than one book going at a time unless I'm in a different location, unless something physical has changed. I'm not at all a mood reader. So when I start a book, it's not like I get 35 pages in and say, well, I'm 35 pages into this book and I'm not DNFing it, but I'm not in the mood now. I'm going to swap to some other book. I don't do that at all. So in ye olden days, that was the answer to this question. Nowadays, not so much. Nowadays, it's entirely likely that the answer would be just one book. But I don't read any more than one book, no matter what. That location doesn't even matter, because I always have a device in hand. I can bring my iPad into the bathroom. I have, like, for instance, ordinarily not. Ordinarily these days, I wonder if I can reach it. Ordinarily these days, it's this. It's my Kindle Oasis. And this can go anywhere. This is in my hand at all times. Even for so-called workbooks. Those of you who might be new to this channel, I'm a book reviewer by trade, and a book section editor, and many times an author or a publicist that is pushing a book will offer the ebook. I'll sign up for the print copies anyway, and I think the the publisher and also especially authors probably like that I do that, because showcasing the book when I open it, when I do mail hauls, puts a lot of attention on that book that that author might not otherwise get, and from exactly the people they want that attention from. Diehard readers who put their money where their mouth is on a regular basis when it comes to books. So I do get those books in the mail, but I get them electronically as well. And usually long ahead of time. It only takes the press of a button to get an electronic copy to me. Like, for instance, the new biography of John Hancock. I will be getting a copy of that book in the mail by and by, mail strikes notwithstanding. I will be getting a copy of a print and paper copy of that book in the mail by and by, and that's good because I can send it out to a freelancer or send it out to somebody for review. But I already have the ebook. This slips into a pocket. This is, it's got the Amazon, the Kindle Oasis has an aluminum backing and the Gorilla Glass on the front. Is this the end? The very last Ranger book. Will the world blow itself up? That is glass on the front, but it's good, Gorilla style glass. It's sliding in and out of the bag. It's not going to bother it at all. So my answer to this question will have changed. This is a huge amount of the reading that I do. It's so convenient. It's so easy that how many books do I have going at the same time? Once upon a time, that might have been determined by location, but this goes with me all the time. So it's more and more only one book going at the same time. So let's see. What is prompt number 2? If you're reading more than one book at a time, how do you decide to switch reading to the other book? Do you read a certain amount of pages in each? In the olden days, it was only location. It was that I didn't want to bring a book into the bathroom. I didn't want to be hunting around for a book to bring into the bathroom. I would just have something I was working on there. I didn't want to worry about exactly what book I was in the mood for if I was packing a bag to go out for daily errands, especially since invariably in my past, whenever I have done that, the sorting procedure, the choosing procedures made me late getting out the door. So I would just put a book in the bag. And the only time I was ever concerned about that or doubled up on it is if I was running out of pages in that book. I would put 2 books in there to make sure I don't run out. But now it's usually just one book at a time. I just blaze through one book after another. So let's see here. Question number 3: do you ever switch bookmarks while you're partway through a book? When we're talking about a print and paper, an analog book, no, not when I'm partway through. I was smiling when I was watching Gina's video. I really do second her opening sentiments. I'll leave a link to her video if I remember to do it, but I really do second her opening sentiments about how wonderful the communal aspect of this weird thing that we do here is. I know that I've been saying that forever, since it's the thing that's made me start this channel, but I really do second it. But I was watching her channel and I was smiling because she was holding up lessons in chemistry and mentioned, she seemed a tiny bit guilty about it. She mentioned that for sheer convenience sake, she often just uses the dust jacket of the book as a bookmark. How can we, let's give you an example here. You've got a print book like this, you've got the dust jacket, and dovetailing with another question in this tag, you just use the dust jacket as a bookmark. And you use if it's a book of a respectable size, a certain size, I would use the front flap of the dust jacket to the halfway point, and then the back dust jacket for the rest of the book. Because it's just so convenient. Other than that, if I'm doing that, that would be with a new release, something from my work shelves that I'm not going to put a bookmark in something like that. So an older release, this is Eleanor of Aquitaine, as it was said. This is a new biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine. This is Eleanor of Aquitaine by Marion Mead. This is an old biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and here we do have a bookmark. Here I wouldn't use a dust jacket. I know this thing has passed the test of time, so it will be here. But mainly, I don't have to worry about it at all. Don't have to think about it anymore. It's not an active part of electronic reading at all. The device keeps track of where I am. I can put bookmarks in more than one place. Why I would do that, I don't know, since I can annotate. Putting a bookmark in an electronic book would be the equivalent of turning down the page, But if I'm turning down the page, I'm turning down the page for a reason. Usually, with an analog book, I would be turning down the page because something on that page was noteworthy. I want to remember to look for it when it comes back to referencing it, but I don't have a pencil handy to actually jot it down. But with an electronic book, there's no reason for me to do that. I do. I can just make a note at any length, at any time, anywhere on the book. So with this thing, there is no such thing as a bookmark. I'm much as fan as I am of tasseled bookmarks that you put in books. I'd much rather not need them at all, and I don't need them with this. It remembers where I am. And when I first did this tag, 7 years ago, I had 2 different dogs, and I had never used an e-reader. I don't think when I last did this tag I'd ever even read an electronic book, or if I had, it had been some sort of demo in some sort of shop or other, but it hadn't been anything that I owned or thought I ever would own. Let's see here. Question number 4. Where do you keep the book you're currently reading? Well, again, this will be a kind of a yardstick of how things have changed in my reading life between when I last did this tag and now. Where I keep the book I'm currently reading is usually right with me. Because I'm a fast reader. I don't have anything else that I do other than read. It's very often the rule that I will start a book and finish it in the same sitting. That is very, very often the case. So it's not like I really go anywhere. But if I am going somewhere, in the old days, if I had an analog book, it was right in my hand. It was right with me at all times. Same thing now, only electronically. This goes everywhere with me. This is all you have to do to take any kind of practicality issues off the table with, for instance, the Kindle Oasis is infamous for its battery-hungry nature. It's got a bigger, better display. It's a more powerful device. It's got this big battery that is the handle of the device. So it requires more charging than, for instance, a paperweight. And the easiest way to just get around that, so you don't need to think about it at all, is I just have a charging cable right where I need it. I have a plugged-in charging cable right where I'm going to be when I'm not going to be using this. So working, in other words, on the laptop. If I'm working on the laptop, then I'm not reading, so this can be charging, and that takes care of it. All you have to do is a minuscule amount of training yourself to charge this thing when you're not using it. Always be charging, A, B, C, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about how power hungry it is. Especially if you've got I have a power cord for this in all the places where I would read it. There are 2 main places where I would use this. There's a power cord right there. So this is with me all the time. Then question number 5, what time of day do you spend the most time reading? The time of day would be the time of night for when we're talking about most time. I read in blocks and chunks during the day. Get the morning's festivities over with. When I first did this tag, those morning festivities were very, very melancholy. They were very sad. I had 2 very old, very sick dogs that I was just taking care of. And morning was just an extension of taking care of them all night. Where, stop licking. I'm talking about you. You're predecessors anyway. Stop licking. What was I saying? Oh, right, yes. Morning was, getting the girls up, getting them moving just a little, seeing if they felt like eating, seeing if there's anything I could tempt them to eat, making sure they got some water, making sure that they were as calm as they could be, and then getting their bathroom needs taken care of, and then settling them down as comfortable as they could be for however long a stretch they could go. And that dictated when I would read. I would read in the interstices of doing those things. I'm not on hospice care right now. I have a little dog, only one dog, and she is in the absolute prime of her health and strength. So she doesn't have any needs. She doesn't have any physical needs of mine, except for a tiny little ear infection that is, she's acting like it's World War III. But she doesn't have any actual physical needs at all. And now that she's 6 going on 7, she doesn't have that endless desire to be up and about and running all around. At all. She is very different from any dog I've ever had. She is my first little dog. She's my first terrier. She's the first time I've ever had a dog where I got the distinct impression that her entire breed was made for indoor human companionship, for living indoors and understanding the rhythms of indoor living. So going out is a fun activity for her, but it's not the norm. So now what I mean to say is I get large chunks of reading done during the day, and I like the organic nature of that. If I've picked up a new release and I don't have much hope for it, and I'm looking at it kind of askance, like it's a smelly fish, and then I start reading it and it starts gripping me, I like the freedom to just let that happen. I like the freedom to just sort of lay back on the couch, lay back on the bed, and give that book its way with me until the spell passes. So that does happen sometimes, and then the huge chunk of time is at night, at midnight. At midnight, I turn into a pumpkin. I turn everything off. You can't reach me electronically. The world doesn't know and it isn't there. The world isn't asking anything. Editors are gone to bed or gone to the bar or whatever. All kinds of freelancers. None of that activity. All of that activity is gone. I know we say that we work 24/7. I know that Americans especially take that way too far. Americans and Japanese people take that way too far. Your work should end when you leave. When you're done for the day, you're done for the day. You should just, the thing you say to your boss should be, don't contact me. Not I'm right here at email and I'll check it every hour, but don't contact me. I'll see you in the morning. Americans don't do that. Most overworkers don't do that. But I shut everything off. Back in the olden days when I had an actual telephone, I unplugged it at midnight so they just read all night long. And the digression about my girls is that nothing will stop that right now. 7 years later, nothing will stop that. When the Bean and I go out at night, wander around, it's never very pleasant. She has almost no night vision. And what little night vision she has plays tricks on her mind, so she sees things that aren't there, jumps at shadows. She doesn't enjoy walking around outside, and I have to say, although I hate it, sounds disloyal, she's not enjoyable to walk with outside at night. It's only for bathroom purposes, and then after that, she's fine for the whole night. So I get to read for huge blocks of time. In fact, often I will take advantage of that so that when we go out, of course we don't go out at midnight, when we go out for the last time, often once I've settled her down and settled the whole place down, I'll start reading then, hours early, and just read all night long. So the night is the huge majority of when I do my reading. Let's see here. Question number 6. How long do you typically read in one go? It depends on the book. If the book is a chore, I'll start, like anybody else, I'll start looking for reasons not to read it. But at night, there aren't any reasons. At night, there's nowhere for me to hide. So hours at a time. Typically hours at a time. Question number 7. Do you read hardcovers with the dust jacket on or off? I read hardcovers. When I'm reading a hardcover, I read it with the dust jacket on. I don't see the point. Otherwise, most of these things are absolutely coming in and going out again. Most of the hardcovers that I get are not staying. Whether I get them at the Brattle Bookshop for $1 or whether I get them free in the mail, they're still not staying. The whole point, I think, of having a steady stream of books coming in is that you have to have a steady stream of books going out, or you're going to be buried in them. I'm close to being buried in them anyway. So for something like this Eleanor Aquitaine book, I would just leave the dust jacket on and not even worry about it. And like Gina confessed, and I'm confessing also, I would also use the dust jacket as a bookmark. If the book comes with no publicity sheet, I don't think this one has one. A lot of times they don't have one. So I'll use the publicity sheet for a bookmark, but if I don't, I'll just use the dust jacket for a bookmark. Although something like this stands a very good chance of staying here. I don't know that I would get rid of this. So let's see here. Question number 8. Which position do you mainly use to read? Recumbent. That would be the easiest way to do it, to say it. Recumbent. Once upon a time, no. I have an old, battered easy chair from Donegal that I, once upon a time, religiously did my reading in that easy chair. And I also have my father's old wooden desk that once upon a time I did a lot of reading at that desk. But I have come especially over the 7 years since I did this tag, maybe in the last 20 years, I have come to look askance at seated reading, which feels like heresy considering how many hours I have spent in Bates Hall of the Boston Public Library. I could not begin to tell you how many hours I have spent there. And yet, I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't be comfortable. I do work sitting up, but I much prefer two-thirds recumbent on the fainting couch here, or two-thirds recumbent on piled up pillows in the little book room. Much prefer that to anything else. Especially since, thanks to laptop computers, I can also work in that position. I do everything in that position except take a shower. So I do. Let's see here. Question number 9. Do you take the book you're currently reading everywhere you go? I do. I do, but I don't go many places anymore. If it's convenient. If the book that I'm currently reading is convenient. So I can just drop this in the bag. I'm certainly not, if I go out and about and the book that I'm currently reading is an analog book, I'm certainly not going to put that in my shoulder bag. Because I know that when I go out, by the time I come back, I will have 50 pounds of books with me. This just adds to the pile. Why would I do that? When I've got, as light as a feather e-reader that it can just slide into a side pocket. So if it's a case like that, if the book that I'm currently reading is an analog book, especially a big one, oh my god, a gigantic, for instance, 1,000-page book on Chinese philosophy, I'm certainly not going to lug that around with me. In the age of ebooks, I'm not gonna lug that around with me, especially since I know that any outside activity is going to accumulate books. I'm not going to bring a book to add to that pile. But if it's an ebook, as it often is, then yeah, it goes everywhere. And question number 10, how often do you update your progress on Goodreads? Oh my. Of all the things that have changed about this tag in 7 years, this one has stayed the same. I mentioned this just the other day on this channel, that I really, really need to revamp my relationship with Goodreads. I know that it's got lots of flaws, but it is where the bulk of readers go. Dedicated, enthusiastic readers go there. A lot of them only go there to log their reading, but lots of other people, lots of them, go there to talk about books, join groups, post reviews, make contacts with other readers. And I know that database is out there. My God, 25 years ago, if you'd have told me that such a thing was ever going to exist, I would have assured you that I would live on that site. And yet, I don't. Now, when I originally did this tag, I think I was pretty irritated with Goodreads for a number of different reasons. Most of those irritations have gone away. The good that it does is so much better than the limitations. And I think it was yesterday I mentioned, irritations with Goodreads, and I mentioned a video by Greg in Another Bibliophile Reads where he's just walking away from Goodreads. And I put the question, what is your relationship with Goodreads? What do you think of it? And I got bombarded with emails. Every time I mention Goodreads, that happens. I got bombarded with emails, especially the huge majority of those emails with people saying, I know Goodreads has its problems. I sympathize with the problems that Greg had and the problems that you've had in the past. But it's wonderful. You should give it a try. The more you put into it, probably the more you'll get out of it. And I believe that. I absolutely believe that. Right now, I do not update any kind of progress on Goodreads. And that's inexcusable. That is inexcusable. How many books have I reviewed so far in 2023? And of that number, how many have I teased or mentioned or talked about at all on Goodreads? Barely any. How many books have I not reviewed? How many new books published in 2023 have I read in 2023 this year and not reviewed at anywhere, including on Goodreads where I could easily do it? In the past, my objection has been, if you're going to write a review of a book for free, then do it on Open Letters Review. Do it on your own website. But there are plenty of books that I read that really don't rise to the level of a full formal review. Plenty. There are plenty like that that don't rise to the level of a full formal review, but where, for instance, if it's an indie author, they would very much appreciate a shorter, less formal review on a site like Goodreads. They would very much appreciate that. Do I do that? No. Should I do that? Yes, absolutely. Just what was it yesterday? I mentioned an indie book called Contain, a post-apocalyptic quasi-zombie thriller called Contain. And one of you sent me an email and said, I know you talk all the time about how you just can't regularize your relationship with Goodreads. And this person also pointed out, and I think that might have to do with you thinking that the reviews on Goodreads aren't real. And the person wrote it, if you're watching, they've said it in a very friendly way. As just, I spend a lot of time talking to you, and you spend a lot of time listening to me, you're going to get what I think about a lot of things. That's absolutely true. It might not be worthy, but it is my reflexive attitude. But that person that emailed pointed out exactly what I'm talking about now. You know, it wouldn't have to be 800 words long. It wouldn't have to be something that you reviewed somewhere else and you're linking it on Goodreads. That author would have loved it if you'd written a quick one paragraph version of the thoughts you gave us when you were talking about the book. Indie authors love, they live to get some sort of notice for their books. That's the big challenge for indie authors, is to get some sort of notice. What you'd think the hardest part would be writing the book, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is the hardest part. But then once the book is done, you've got to make somebody aware that it exists. I read a lot of that sort of stuff. I should do that. I absolutely should do that. But I don't. At the moment, I don't. I need to just get this huge writing research project off my back, and then I will revamp my relationship on Goodreads. This will be the year that I do it. And then question number 11 is, who do you tag? But this is like I said, this is a very old tag. I did this 7 years ago, so I have no idea who would want to do this. If you have done this tag already, but it's been a long time, I would love to know how your answers have changed. Certainly, I found it fascinating myself to think back to when I did this, when you could tell how distracted I was. My girls would have been right next to me, either sleeping or worrying, or just laying there worrying. If you've had an old or a chronically ill dog, sometimes they're not asleep. They're frightened. And I made videos anyway. There's certainly a theory to be made that I made videos because I needed company during that period when my girls were slowly leaving me. But I was talking softer, and I was all concerned with them. Their hospice care was most of what I thought about and did. And now everything's completely different. There was that, and there was also no electronic reading component in my life at the time, when now it's a huge amount. Now it's gigantic. So I felt it was time for a redo. Maybe I'll do another 7-year-old tag over again next time. But I wanted to do Tag Tuesday. I don't technically have this time. I'm sorry. I don't technically have this time, but I thought I'd do it anyway. If Gina's doing it, I thought I'd do it anyway, because like she says in her video, I do treasure these communal things that we do. So that's a tag redo. But I've got to go now. So I will wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.